Hey guys, what is up? AwesomeTheSauce here. Hope you guys are having a great day and welcome to a video that I've been wanting to make for a really long time. I don't know if y'all know this, but there are a lot of item cards in Wizard101 that have never become real spells. Literally, the developers just made them into spells and then they became part of like one piece of equipment. And then that was it. They never saw the light of day. They're basically irrelevant. I thought, why not make a video on my top 5 spells that are item cards that I really want them to be regular cards so we can train and use. So without further ado, let's talk about my top 5 spells that I hope become real. The first spell, number 5 on this top 5, is definitely gonna have to be Dark Empower. Now, if you don't know what Dark Empower is, it's basically you can only get it from end bosses in Mirage, but it's a really cool spell. Super underrated. So if you get an amulet, if you're lucky enough to get an amulet, I don't know if this is the best one, but it's close to, you get the idea. It gives some health, it gives some pip conserve, some stun resist. It's not really usable. But look at that card, my boy. Look at that card. Basically what Dark Empower does is it converts one shadow pip into a whole power pip and a regular pip. I feel like, unfortunately, with this current meta, if you don't use a shadow pip and you're sitting on 2 shadow pips the whole game, technically your opponent can just keep using their shadow pip. There's currently no solution to that problem besides just spamming hits. So what that means is maybe you'll cast a Hungry, maybe you'll cast a Grenadier, maybe you'll cast a Wings of Fate when you don't really need to, but only because if you don't do it, then you'll be behind for no reason. I want more spells that use shadow pips for other things other than just hits and strike. It would be really cool. And honestly, maybe if this works, they could do other things where you could sacrifice a shadow pip for other things. I just think that a spell like this would open the door for a lot of strategy, so I've always wanted it. So that's why it's number 5 on my list. Number 4 on the list is Incendiate. Now here's the thing. This fire already has a spell like Incendiate. It's basically just called Detonate. And what Detonate does, if there's an overtime on your opponent, you basically just destroy it and it deals 100%. There are very few reasons for using this. If you want to use like a Nightbringer Detonate, maybe you could do all the damage that you need on the overtime all at once so it doesn't get triaged. The only other real use for this is, you know, if you do an actual overtime and you need to kill your opponent right away and you can't afford to wait the 2 more rounds, and yeah, you can detonate. It's very situational. You'd be hard pressed to really see anyone use this spell. But Incendiate, it's different. It basically the spell it's on a few items. It's on a Maycast and it's also on the Dahlia's hat. But basically this spell is 6 pips, and what it does is that basically it does literally double the damage on the overtime. I just think it's a really cool concept. I think it's clearly stupid as a Maycast. I don't like the way Maycast Incendiate works, but I do think there is something to be said about fire being an overtime school. Spells like Fire Wyvern, spells like Dragon, spells like Burning Rampage, and even spells like Ashen Bone. All of these spells could have a totally new meaning with Incendiate, and it's not like it's crazy overpowered. It's 6 whole pips. If someone were to try to incendiate an Ashen Bones, they would need basically full pips anyways to do it. Not to mention the fact that you could always just get triaged while trying to do it. I just think spells like Incendiate, or anything that can manipulate an overtime in general, I think that's what fire needs, because triage is so good against overtimes. I feel like there should be a good way to combat it and really punish people if they can't triage because of the situation you've set up by casting the overtime. So yeah, that's my number 4. You know what I'm saying? That's my, I hope we see something like that. You know, some kind of DOT manipulation would be pretty dope. Number 3 is a very underrated pick in my opinion. I feel like if people saw the full list of all the item cards that aren't spells, a lot of people wouldn't say that this is worth even paying attention to. But I really think it's underrated because Life is missing a really important mechanic, and it's a real shame. I think everyone agrees that Life is a healing school, but it also is a school that has a really cool mechanic, which is Absorb. Hungry Caterpillar, it hits and then it doesn't absorb. The only other absorb that we actually have that's like easy to use anyways is Spirit Armor, but there's also Rebirth. You know, it also doesn't absorb. There's enough spells within the school of Life that absorb that I genuinely think that we should have more. So this spell, it's a really cool concept. I would honestly change this one actually to 4 pips instead of 5. That's just my personal thing, but you know, basically this is what it does. It's called Guiding Armor, and it puts on a guiding light and it absorbs for 500 with basically like a really nice 5 pip investment. You're investing 5 pips into an absorb and a guiding light. Now, the reason I think it's better off that it's 4 pips is because it's a 500 absorb, and the 3 pip version is already 400. So it's almost like you're just doing this and guiding lighting, but you're doing it in 1 turn. If it were to stay 5 pips, I'd want the absorb to be just a little higher. But either way, it would be really cool. I think absorbs can be extremely powerful. If you can get a shield behind an absorb, and you can do other things with it, that's the key, man. That can make absorbs on another level. The only reason absorbs aren't used as strategically is because you put a whole round into it, and there's no real way to put a whole round into an absorb to protect a shield if your opponent always has the ability to remove that shield during that round. I know that Sacred Charge is a spell. It's very, very hard to get. I would love if there was a hit and absorb as well, like Hungry, that did a big absorb for a small hit. That would be really cool too. But basically, I want more absorbs for life. I genuinely think that would make life more interesting. And absorbs, again, they're not broken. They subtract damage. They don't even take resist into account. It's just pure strategy, in my opinion. And it would be pretty cool to see. That's all I'm saying. Number 2 on this list, my balance bias is showing. I'm sorry, my balance bias is showing. This is something that I genuinely need. I think it needs to be a real spell, because I think balance, it's supposed to be the school that can use every school, right? That's what it's supposed to be. But I'm calling BS on that, because you know what, man? I don't really get that impression. All we really have, I gotta get this off my chest. All we really got is Hydra and Chimera. That's awful. That's terrible. And Gaze, they tried to do this with Gaze, but the whole addition of the bubble makes this a butt cheek spell. It's purely utility. I think they should fix the mistake that they made with Gaze and make this into a spell. I think I would tweak this just a little bit. What I would do, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it is a 9 pip spell, and I think every school should obviously get a 9 pip spell. Like, if this spell becomes real, then maybe they can give every school their Olympus spell thing. Basically, right? The Wrath of Aquila. What this does, it does 275 damage of every spirit school or every elemental school, and then adds another 275 balance damage. I would change it a little bit and make it a triple hit, just like Hydra and Chimera. But basically one school could be random, just like it always is. One school could be balanced, and I think the third school could be like a moon, or like, you know, astral. You know what I'm saying? Like, it could be something that you still can only really prevent with the tower. I think one of the huge issues with Chimera and Hydra as spells is that once you blade, like a Spirit Blade or an Elemental Blade, it's awful, because you can just get Spirit Shielded or Legend Shielded, and then you have to Shatter in order to do any good damage, and it's just a hot mess. That's why every balance was just mana burns into Supernova. It's ridiculous. I think they should focus on making more spells that use the whole, you know, multi-hit, you know, thing. I think that would make balance feel more special, because right now, what it really comes down to is mana burning people's pips down and trying to control the match a lot, but there's very, very little offensive ability. And honestly, it's totally justified, in my opinion, giving them something that follows the trend of a bunch of other spells. I just think it would be cool. Get the Astral Schools involved, maybe even get the Shadow School involved as part of a balance hit. That's all I'm saying. And finally, I have always thought this is a really, really cool spell. Super, super underrated. Obviously not even allowed in PvP, but this spell's cool. It's called Disjunction. I know it seems weird to put this at the top of the list. What my hope is that I don't want it to be a myth spell. I want it to be like, I don't know, it doesn't have to be a myth. Maybe just like, you know, something that everyone can learn, right? Like something you can train. And instead of 8 pips, I think it should be closer to like, you know, the full 7 pips. I just think that currently some schools have no counter to blade stacking, no real counter to feint stacking. And I think, you know, as cheesy as those strats are, it would be cool if there was also, you know, reverse cheese. You know, if you could just put all of your pips into something and completely ruin someone's blade stacking strat, I feel like that would be kind of funny. Basically what Disjunction does, unlike Dimension Shift, which trades all hanging effects between you and a minion, it trades between you and your opponent. What I want is the ultimate disrespect, which is to do that to somebody. I also really want this to be available to every school, mainly because people can just shield over and over again. People can stall with Guiding Light. People can do a lot of trap stacking strategies that you really don't have any counter to. It would solve a lot of issues with the game if you can just use 7 pips real quick and just get rid of all of it and then maybe work off of it. So I like the concept of it more than anything else on this list, so that's why it's number 1. As always, guys, guys. Let me know what y'all think. This is honestly just a video I've been wanting to make. These are some spells that, honestly, they look cool. They feel cool. I've always wanted to see how they would affect PvP. What do you guys think? Do you agree with my list? Would you change up the placements? Or would you want other item cards? Let me know in the comments below what y'all's opinions is. As always, drop a like if you enjoyed. Leave a sub if you're new. There's tons of links in the description, including my Twitch, my Twitter, my Discord, my Instagram, and of course my Patreon. And as always, if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. So stay awesome. And yeah, y'all.